We're ready to go.
Eva, you're on.
Dzień dobry Państwu. I am Eva Neterovich, and I welcome you from the heartland of America, Chicago, Illinois, from the fields of Wisconsin, and the sunshine state of Florida to this very special program sponsored by WPNA Radio, the Polish National Alliance Radio. Our program is being picked up by Polish radio stations throughout the United States and is live streamed on the internet. We now have a new YouTube channel where you can view our entire broadcast. Please visit YouTube under the heading Polish Americans for Trump 2020 Show. Now I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Dr. Michelle S. Pawlowski from Florida. And we have a very outstanding, wonderful, very special guest today.
Thank you very much, Eva. Polish Americans, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce to you an outstanding, great American from the great state of Wisconsin, a wonderful patriot, the state where the highest overall percentage of population of Polish Americans in the state, which is about 10%. It gives me great honor to present to you on our program the Honorable Glenn Grothman from the 6th District of Wisconsin and a proud Republican. Now, my co-host, Eva Neterovich, is one of your constituents, Congressman. And if you do not mind, I would like to turn the show over to Eva at this point. Eva?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, Congressman, I am one of your proud constituents. I have voted for you consistently, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you on our show and have you representing my district. I know you were elected in 2014, and you have done really a stellar job. And as you might remember, Congressman, we both went to the Trump rally last Saturday in Janesville, Wisconsin. I thought the rally was fantastic. The president honored you at that rally, and I wanted to know what were your impressions?
Well, I thought it was a good speech. President Trump went over a lot of his accomplishments. First of all, I'm honored to represent Wisconsin in Congress. And as you mentioned, if you don't like the Polish people, you have no business being a congressman from the state of Wisconsin. We're very proud of the Polish people in this district. I thought it was a great rally. A lot of people still don't know all the great things President Trump has done. He recited a lot of them, and we're going to go over them a little bit in this show. I know a lot of your listeners may not have decided yet who they're going to vote for, or maybe if they have decided, they have children, they have siblings, they have friends who haven't decided. So we'd like to go in just one place here, go through some of President Trump's accomplishments and some of the kind of scary things that might happen if Vice President Biden gets elected, so that you have one concise place to go for your presidential election news this time around.
Yes, I think, Congressman, that's terrific. We want to hear your views, and we want to hear about President Trump's accomplishments. We talk about them every single day, and how important it is for Polish Americans to turn out in huge numbers to reelect this wonderful president that we have.
Oh, absolutely. Do you mind if we start off going through a couple of the accomplishments that President Trump went through?
Oh,
First of all,
yes.
we have immigration. So many immigrants in the past have come here legally, and because they're legally, they can be appropriately vetted, and we know they're going to be a big asset to the United States. And of course, that's true of so many Polish immigrants. We had a big problem prior to President Trump getting there, and even in the first 2 or 2.5 years of President Trump before he could really take control. And then we've had, as recently as 15 months ago, we had 100,000 people allowed in this country who we didn't necessarily want per month. Obviously, America can't stay the America we are if we have 100,000 unvetted people coming here. President Trump negotiating with Mexico, negotiating with the Central American countries, has brought that $100,000 figure to a 100,000 figure down to something close to 10,000 a month. So that's something we have to remember from President Trump. I know so many people voted for him 4 years ago because they felt it was time to enforce their immigration laws. And that's what President Trump is doing. He kind of had to threaten Mexico with tariffs. He had to threaten some Central American countries with perhaps losing some of their foreign aid. We've gone from 100,000 a month to under 10,000 a month. And you got to remember, if President Trump leaves, because he did that without the help of Congress, the laws are going to switch back to what they used to be. So it'll bounce right up to 100,000 a month and maybe more because, of course, Joe Biden is promising free health care for all illegal immigrants. And as part of the COVID package right now, they're promising another $1,200 check to illegal immigrants. So it's one thing that President Trump recited, and he has come through on his promises on immigration. Then he talked about trade. You know, I've heard as a politician, I've been around for 20 years. I was in the state legislature first. People have been complaining about the bad trade deal that was cut by Bill Clinton 25 years ago now. Well, President Clinton ripped up that deal. New negotiations with Mexico, new negotiations with Canada. China is no longer able to take advantage of the Canada-Mexico agreement to push some of their products across the Mexican border. I was talking to one of the farmers the other day. He is very pleased with the price, the upward price of some of his commodities, which he attributes to the things that President Trump has done, not only with Mexico and Canada and China, but with Japan as well. So I'll guarantee you, I'm a Republican, but it's not something that George Bush would have ever cared enough about the average guy to get done. This is President Trump renegotiating these trade deals, and we have to thank him for it. He talked a little bit about energy. And, you know, throughout most of my life, it seemed whenever anything bad happened in the Middle East, the price of price of gas was $3 a gallon, $4 a gallon. When was the last time you saw that? Now something bad happens in the Middle East, you don't even know what happened because gas is at $1.80 a gallon or $1.90 a gallon. At least that's what it is in the state of Wisconsin. So again, we have to thank President Trump. I know it wasn't easy to make the United States an exporter of oil, an exporter of energy, but President Trump did it. Don't forget to tell your friends, thank President Trump for that $1.90, $1.95 a gallon gas. It's not something that would have happened with another president.
Congressman, I just want to say that the gas actually in Dane County a few months ago was 99 cents a gallon, if you can imagine that. 99 cents a gallon.
Only under President Trump, I'll tell you
Yes.
that. And it looks like we've settled it under $2. And again, he cares about the average guy. You know, I sometimes think he tweets a little bit too much, but one thing you can't say, you can't say he doesn't care about the average guy. And I know that's what he was thinking of as he lowered those gas prices by opening up oil fields or more access to oil fields from North Dakota, other places all over the country. Then another thing he reminded us, we're from NATO, we're glad Poland's part of NATO, but we have to realize that we got a lot of wealthy countries in Europe, Germany, France, and for years, they've been relying on America defense. And, particularly think of a company like Germany, very, very well-off country, they didn't really contribute their fair share. And, everybody else, Jimmy Carter, even our wonderful Ronald Reagan, George Bush the first, George Bush the second, Barack Obama, they didn't care. We'll just keep letting the Germans take advantage of us. We don't care. Who finally got NATO to kick in their fair share? Donald Trump. Finally, somebody stepped up to the plate and put America first. And we got to thank Donald Trump for that too. You wouldn't see any other president do that except for Donald Trump. Then I'll tell you something else that makes me feel good about Donald Trump. I was in a committee the other day. It seems there are people who probably don't remember a time when you turn on the news at night, a U.S. soldier in Afghanistan was getting killed. Maybe a helicopter gets shot down. Maybe a landmine goes off. Do you know we've gone 7 months without a combat fatality in Afghanistan? Thank you, President Trump. 7 months without a combat fatality, right?
Yes,
Something listeners to remember. And I'll tell you, you're never going to get a president fight for our troops like President Trump unless you get him reelected and show the gratitude for 7 months without a combat fatality in Afghanistan. Then the next thing he's He's getting involved in drug pricing. I'm in Washington, and I don't take money from the drug companies either, because I think sometimes they squeeze the public, they charge too much. I think we have too many drugs being prescribed in this nation. But President Trump is pushing through more generics, doing what he can. He's in court, but trying to allow us to legally import drugs back from China. Again, something President Trump is doing. You didn't see Barack Obama doing it. You didn't see George Bush standing up to the drug companies. President Trump is getting it done because he's not hostage to a bunch of campaign contributors. He only wants to do what's right by the average person back home. Now, you mentioned pro-life. President Trump is pro-life. He took over an administration, took over from Barack Obama, abortions 7 months in, they didn't have a problem with it. President Trump, respectful of our Christian traditions here in the United States, he stepped up to the plate, squeezing money away from Planned Parenthood, which not only is a large abortion provider, but I know pushes sex ed programs even for the youngest of children, which I find offensive. President Trump went to bat for the Christians here, and I'd like to thank him for that as well. I know it's tough to be pro-life in this environment, but I hope everybody out there remembers what President Trump has done for the pro-life movement. I think people in the pro-life movement felt he's a better friend of theirs than even Ronald Reagan. And again, an example where President Trump is out there swinging, fighting for the average person. He's got to put up with the Democrats attacking him. He's got to put up with the media attacking him. He says, I don't care. I promised the American public I'd be a pro-life president. I promised the American public we'd get out of Afghanistan. I promised the American public that we'd have those European nations like Germany, and not like Germany, but like Germany finally pay their fair share. He's getting it done. And don't forget it, and don't let your friends forget it. And then I look on the other side. I look at the things Joe Biden is promising to do. Well, on immigration, it's just scary. He's promising free medical care. Joe Biden and the Democrats are mad at Donald Trump for trying to keep people out of this country who are going to go on welfare right away.
Yes.
Think about the difference in America the next 4 years, whether we have somebody who wants to vet the people who are coming here, or somebody who with pride says, show up, you don't have to be legal, we'll give you free medical care. That's Joe Biden. I do not want somebody like that for the next 4 years. You talk about the police. And by the way, there are a lot of Polish police in the city of Milwaukee, I'll have you know. But you talk about the police. Joe Biden wants to get rid of something called qualified immunity. He wants to make it so you can be sued by anybody if you handcuff somebody, if you tackle somebody. Oh, I got whiplash. Oh, I got hurt. People I know in law enforcement, the sheriffs, the police chiefs, they don't even who'd go into police work if Joe Biden got in there and hit his plan for police. Donald Trump, we had decreases in murders his first 2 years as president after 2 big increases under Barack Obama. And why is that? It's because President Trump had their back. And we got to appreciate a president who's looking out for law enforcement. And we got to be scared to death that Joe Biden's going to go in there and remove what they call as qualified immunity from our law enforcement. I mean, what a disaster that would be. Other things to look at. You mentioned. Can
I mention something, Congressman? The other thing that scares me is, to your point, not only is Joe Biden a disaster, but in my view, seeing him recently, he's looking very frail. And what he's got lurking behind him is Kamala Harris, who is a draconian prosecutor from the state of California. She was a disaster. She was voted on as the most liberal member of the U.S. Senate, and was one nasty debater in her debate against Joe Biden, and then he picked her. So it's very, very scary to me that should anything happen to Joe Biden, and in my view, he's not looking very good, we have this woman lurking to take over the American presidency.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, and Joe Biden, should he get elected, will be 78 years old when he's sworn in. Now, we all know people who are 78-year-olds and sharp. I know some businessmen who are 78-year-old, they're sharp as a tack. But we also know people who are 78 years old in memory care. right? So you kind
Yeah.
of, when you get up that age, you gotta judge the individual. Is this like my buddy who's 93 and an active, sharp businessman, or is this somebody like 78 years old, can't quite take care of himself? And I will agree with you. I think some of the things Joe Biden has said concerns you, and because of that, you have to pay more careful attention to the vice presidential candidate than you normally do. And that's why Kamala Harris is so important. You know, right now, she's one of 100 US senators. These groups that rank all 100 list her as the most liberal of the 100 US senators, the most radical. And, you know, it's easy just to focus on Joe Biden. But when you think of Kamala Harris, the most radical, you know what I think of when I think of Kamala Harris? I think about 2 years ago when she was a US senator and she was badgering this nominee to be a judge for being a member of the Knights of Columbus.
Oh,
Now, to
oh,
me, I've always felt the Knights of Columbus is like mom and apple pie, right? I know there are so many Knights of Columbus chapters here in Wisconsin, and they're kind of the pillar of the community. You know, they're always out doing volunteer work, raising money for maybe, you know, somebody has cancer or something, we'll help them out. There's nothing more helpful than the Knights of Columbus. I've never in my entire life heard one person say a bad thing about the Knights of Columbus. All of a sudden, some judge who's a member of the Knights of Columbus goes before the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and Kamala Harris is saying, "What? What type of radical organization you're a member of? You're a member of the Knights of Columbus. I don't know if we can let you be a judge."
oh,
I mean, you know, Christianity is such a big part of America's identity, America's uh, past. One of the reasons why America has been such a great country is the devout Christians in this country. And when I heard Kamala Harris go after this guy and say, "I don't think we should let you be a judge because you're a member of the Knights of Columbus," I thought, how did somebody like that get in the US Senate? And lo and behold, you look another year and a half down the road, she's not in the US Senate. They want her to be the vice president.
it's,
I
it's,
do
it's
not
frightening.
want,
It's frightening.
I do
It's
not want a vice
scary.
president who
Yeah.
says that you're a member of the Knights of Columbus, you can't be a judge in this country. I mean, my goodness, with the American, and you're right, because Joe Biden, man, he's almost 78 right now. You know, in 4 years, he's going to be 82. Is he still going to be in there, or are we going to get Kamala Harris? I want your folks back home to think about that. Do we want a president of the United States who thinks a Knight of Columbus should should not be a judge? I mean, I always thought Christianity was a good thing. I always thought it was, you know, I think John Adams said, America is only fit for a moral people. I think it was John Adams who said that. And our forefathers did. This country was made for naturally moral people. And when you begin to get people in elected position who say, "You're a Christian, we can't trust you," I mean, it's so sad. And I just hope the American public wakes up because, like I said, Donald Trump, you know, the end of the holiday tree, we're going to make it a Christmas tree. I mean, Donald Trump, I think, understands the importance of Christianity to America, continue to be a great country. And on the other hand, you have Kamala Harris. She thinks the Knights of Columbus is some, you know, radical organization, and we ought to view people who join it as suspicious. I mean, what a dramatic difference. It would just scare me to death. It does scare me to death that right now the polls would indicate that Kamala Harris could be vice president. And given, you know, Joe Biden, sometimes a little bit forgetful, she could very easily become president. I mean,
Oh,
if you would have
oh,
told Abraham Lincoln or George Washington that, you know, Christianity would be, you know, verboten, uh, it's just a very scary situation.
You know, President Biden does not even know what type of government Poland has. When he was making his remarks at the at the town hall last week, Thursday, he thought Poland was a totalitarian regime next to Belarus. So, you know,
Well,
he's
um,
demented already.
I will
yeah,
tell you,
no
I've had
question.
private conversations with um, people who are diplomats from what used to be known as Eastern European countries. And they are afraid that President Trump would lose because there's kind of a resurgence of Christianity in those countries, Poland, Hungary, what have you. And they do not want an American government, like quite frankly, we've had in the past that are somewhat hostile to Christianity. So, I think we have to vote for America first. But we have to remember that if President Trump were to lose, it would be trouble for other Christian peoples around the world as well.
You're totally correct. You're totally correct, Congressman. Congressman, I'd like to ask you something. I'm a lifetime member of the National Rifle Association. I was raised to learn how to shoot. I went hunting. Actually, I went hunting once up in Wisconsin with my father and did a lot of hunting also in some other states. But what's your position on, to me, the Second Amendment is like life's blood. Okay, it's part of the American heritage. What's your position on the Second Amendment?
Well, our forefathers put the Second Amendment in there because they knew a free people is able to take care of themselves. They're able to defend themselves. So that's why it's in there. And one more time, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I've been endorsed by gun groups, including the NRA, over a period of years. But we have to, again, wonder about certain politicians, including both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who are hostile to the Second Amendment. They want only the government to have the guns or the criminals to have the guns. And there's another thing. Joe Biden has said that he will name Beto O'Rourke, who was a very radical congressman from Texas,
Yes.
to put him in charge of gun policy. A guy who doesn't like guns. I mean, look, I was raised in a family and my dad did not have a gun, I'll tell you, but our forefathers wanted guns to be in the hands of the people, not the government. And I would be very suspicious of politicians like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and apparently Beto O'Rourke, who is known as probably the second most anti-gun Democrat on that stage a year ago this time, to put those people in charge of gun policy. And of course, there are people in every country, big government people. One of the things they want to do, we want to take the guns away from the people, right? Happened in England, happened in Australia. They've always been out there waiting for their guy to grab the guns. Well, why is Joe Biden naming Beto O'Rourke? Why is he putting him in charge of gun policy? The most radical, or I'd say maybe the second most radical anti-gunner of the 20 plus Democrats who ran for the presidential position. I mean, it scares me. I don't like radicals. And a radical like Beto O'Rourke on guns, it tells you something.
Congressman, that's a very good point. I watched that Democratic debate, and I remember hearing Beto O'Rourke saying he was interviewed by someone who asked him whether he, if elected, would take people's guns away. And I think I remember the exact quote. And he said, "Damn right, I'm going to take your guns away."
Why are they so afraid of the people having the guns and not just the government? And why would Joe Biden, of all those Democrats on that stage, pick Beto O'Rourke to be in charge of his gun policy? I mean, you just got to look out. Everything is kind of lining up here to be a very, I say police heavy. By police heavy, I mean a government heavy administration and taking the power away from the people. And I don't think we've ever had such a radical anti-gun statement as Joe Biden was making, at least not in my lifetime, for somebody who is a nominee of one of the two major political parties.
I agree with you, Congressman. One of the things in the back of my mind is I always remember my uncle, my father, my son have all served in the military. My uncle was actually at Iwo Jima, and my father trained pilots in the Navy. They made tremendous Polish Americans across the country, in your state as well as other states, sacrificed a lot for this country, giving up some some of them losing their limbs, some of them losing their lives. What are you doing to support the president and the veterans in this country from your perspective? Can you shed some light on that for us?
Well, just like President Trump, I was an advocate of a bill that I think passed again because President Trump was president. You know, the VA was a little bit of a mess when President Trump took over. And over a period of years, a lot of presidents were afraid to take on the VA bureaucracy. But President Trump knew there were some lemons in the VA, just as there are lemons everywhere. And he felt our veterans deserve the best care. We're going to get rid of the lemons. So we passed a bill. I was proud to vote for the bill, happy to vote for the bill. And President Trump was pleased to sign the bill. So he not only has allowed us to get rid of some of the underperforming employees in the VA, but he has expanded options. If you need medical care, you're a veteran, get closer to home, are not satisfied with your local VA. President Trump again and again has put veterans first, which I'm glad to hear about. And quite frankly, it's not a surprise that other presidents would not straighten out the VA because it took guts. And President Trump stood up to some of those hidebound bureaucrats, said we got to make things better. Not something Barack Obama would do, not something George Bush would do. Either George Bush would have done. But President Trump put veterans first. We got to reward him, man. How can you vote against him when he sticks up for veterans the way a Obama or a Bush or a Clinton wouldn't, right?
Well, absolutely right. We can't vote against him. We have to have President Trump reelected. Now, an issue Pardon?
Tell your friends, all your listeners, tell your friends, because we've all got them. How can you vote for President Trump? He called somebody a name. How can you vote for President Trump? The National Enquirer said something or other. You tell them why to vote for President Trump, and you tell them what a mess this country is going to be with 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And we don't want to embarrass our country by having a vice president or a president-to-be say we can't even put a Knight of Columbus on a judicial bench. How can American public do that? Please tell me, Ava. Tell me,
Yes.
Dr. Michelle. Tell me America is not falling that far.
You're speaking to the choir, Congressman. You couldn't be more right. Now, an issue that is close to the heart of President Trump is ending sanctuary cities. Now, I know that you sponsored legislation ending sanctuary cities. Would you like to give us your thoughts about that?
This is part of a big problem. There are people who don't believe America should have immigration laws, and they're all over our country. And some days what happens is you get a mayor, a city council, and they say, we're not going to allow you to enforce the immigration laws in our country. We have some criminal, the immigration enforcement people want to come and kick them out of the country. They say, hey, wait a minute, you're in Madison, Wisconsin, say, we're a sanctuary city. We're going to do all we can to make sure we can enforce the immigration laws in our country. And we finally have a president who's trying to stand up to those cities, trying to say, hey, you're part of the United States of America. We have immigration laws here. It's not up to you to say we're going to provide a sanctuary for anybody who wants to come here and break the law. And across the board, the number of people who think we can operate as a nation without any immigration laws is scary. And partly it's the sanctuary cities. Partly it is on this current negotiation for another COVID bill. Almost every Democrat in Congress, not all, but almost all, voted in the bill in the past to give $1,200 checks to illegal immigrants. I'm not making it up. I'm afraid when I repeat this stuff, people back home will say, oh, Growth was just making it up. I can't believe anybody out there would even give a $1,200 check to people who are here illegally. Yes, they would. They would. They tried. Twice they tried to pass the bill and it got out of the House and was killed by the Senate. If that's the type of nuttiness you want to have running this country, we're done. And they're out there all over the place. And Joe Biden will do it. It's nuttier than I'm telling you. Not only do they want to give $1,200 to illegals, but the first $1,200 check only went to citizens. So they want to give an extra $1,200 to illegals to make up for the fact they didn't get a check the first time. That's $2,400 for illegals. Driving our kids and grandkids further and further into debt. That's how bad it is. Please, America, don't vote for Joe Biden. Don't do it.
No, and congressmen. We need to elect more congressmen like you so we can replace Nancy Pelosi, the wicked witch
Yes.
of the West.
It's
know,
critical that we get rid of that woman.
Actually, I know all my friends come up to me and say, how can you deal with Nancy Pelosi? She seems so radical. I am here to tell you the average Democrat in Washington is more liberal than Nancy Pelosi. I know you don't believe it, but it's true. Certainly Kamala Harris is more liberal than Nancy Pelosi. So I'm just saying, how can I deal with her? I feel like I'm dealing with, I've talked to Nancy Pelosi. I feel I'm dealing with somebody with a little more rational than the average Democrat I deal with. I'm just being honest there. I know you wanted me to say how horrible she is. She's more central and moderate than the average Democrat in Congress right now, is my belief.
Well, we feel
certainly
very
more
sorry for you that you have to deal with those kinds of radicals in the Congress that are worse than Nancy Pelosi, because it's almost inconceivable that anybody could be worse than Nancy Pelosi.
I will tell you, I think Kamala Harris is certainly more left than Nancy Pelosi, and she could wind up being vice president in 3 months. So remember that, folks.
You're right. Congressman, I have a lot of friends who are seniors, and they're concerned about what's going to happen in the future. What can you give us in terms of an insight in terms of what President Trump is doing for seniors and what you yourself would like to see done for seniors? Because I play golf with some seniors. I go to the country club periodically for dinner with seniors. I have a lot of senior friends.
President Trump is going to protect Social Security. He's going to protect Medicare. He is working on the cost of drugs, as I mentioned. And of course, as we get older, we're more likely to have, prescription drugs prescribed. And we talked about what he's done with regard to generic drugs. We've talked what he's done about trying to reimportation of drugs from Canada. And I think above all, he's going to try to keep America a free country. And every senior I know, what type of country we're leaving to our children and grandchildren is of paramount importance. And you look at the radical things that are being said, tearing down the country, calling us racist by the Democrats, and Donald Trump hanging in there day after day, fighting for America. I mean, seniors above all, I think, want their children and grandchildren to have the same great country that they lived in their whole life. And they look at kind of the moral decline, the decline over the last 20 years, and they just don't want it to continue. And President Trump loves this country. He wants to make it what it once was. I think he's improved things in the last 4 years, but we've got to give him another 4 years. We can't have 4 years of open borders. We can't have 4 years of people wanting to spend another fast $3 trillion. We can't have it. We can't have a country in which the police are constantly being undermined so that they really can engage in maintaining law and order. And that's why we need Donald Trump.
You're right. One other question from my perspective. I know you touched briefly about agriculture, but when I grew up, my parents had a farm outside of the town that we lived in. And one of my grandfather's relatives, I think he was his brother, managed the farm for us. It was a little farm, not very big, but there's a heck of a lot of Polish farmers across the nation and in Wisconsin who own large agricultural facilities where they both raise cattle and grow plants, corn, etc. What can you give us in terms of some insight for the future for the agricultural industry from your perspective and Donald Trump?
Well, when you think of trade, a lot of times you think of manufacturing, but the United States was getting the short end of the stick on agriculture as well. Every agriculture group that I know, I do what I can for agriculture. Obviously Wisconsin, a big dairy state, corn, other crops, some pigs. We have to have our fair share of markets in other countries. And whether you're talking about Canada, whether you're talking about Mexico, whether you're talking about Japan, whether you're talking about China in particular, we're going to be selling a lot more agriculture products to these countries in the first place, which is so important. I know things have been tough the last couple of years for a lot of farmers, but right now the prices are coming back. It breaks my heart when I ever see a dairy farm go under. And I think President Trump and his Ag Secretary, Sonny Perdue, are doing what I can and doing what they can in these trade deals. When President Trump cut them again, he certainly was looking at agriculture, particularly the deal with Canada, particularly when he deals with China. He sees the huge number of people over there, how much better off our farmers would be if we are selling more dairy and other products to the Chinese. So I think that's the major thing that can be done. I was talking about to a farmer the other day. He was very happy with the corn, with the beans, with the dairy, and the deals that President Trump was cutting.
Congressman, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our broadcast here. But as you know, we have 2 weeks left to this election, 2 weeks. So I would like to hear your predictions. In 2016, as you know, Wisconsin made a big difference in this election. How is your district going to vote, and how is Wisconsin going to vote, and what are your overall predictions?
Well, I think President Trump's going to win my district, but he's got to win by more. 4 years ago at this time, everybody said President Trump was going to lose, but everybody pushed in the last 10 days and got a victory to save America. And we're in the same boat now. I believe that if the election were held today, I do not think President Trump would win Wisconsin. I might be wrong. I think 10 days from now, I think President Trump can win Wisconsin. I'm going to continue to get on shows such as yours around the state and make the case why President Trump has done so many good things, and even more, make the case the disastrous things that would happen if Joe Biden got in there. And all of your listeners have to do that. They can replay this tape. We've gone on many good things that President Trump has done, and we've explained some of the dangerous things about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I think you've got to, as you approach your children, you approach your siblings, people who are up in the air yet, or people who don't like Donald Trump because he didn't tweet something or tweeted something, we've got to get every one of those people on board, because if we want to keep America great, we cannot have open borders. We cannot have a vice president who dislikes the Knights of Columbus. We cannot have a president who doesn't have the back of the police. And you think what a different and worse America we'd have for 4 years with somebody following down that path. So that's my request of your my request to your listeners is that you get your notes, maybe replay this and listen to it again, and then approach your children and your grandchildren, your next door neighbors, and say, please vote for President Donald Trump. We cannot have 4 years of Joe Biden and 4 years of Kamala Harris.
In addition to President Trump, I want to vote for you. I think you are an outstanding citizen, an outstanding representative of the Republican Party, an outstanding representative of the Republican Congress. I am proud to have the opportunity to speak with you today. All of your constituents have to get out the vote to you and for President Trump. Ava?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, our program unfortunately has come to a close, and we want to say dziękuję to our Polish audience. We have many, many outstanding guests coming up on our show, and we look forward to our future broadcasts. And Congressman Grothman, we are very, very thrilled to have had you today and to hear what you have to say. And we want to thank you for appearing on our show from the bottom of our hearts. Dziękuję bardzo.
Yes, dziękuję bardzo, and Congressman Grothman. May God bless you and keep you in his heart. And we, all the Polish people, will keep you in our hearts, because we know that you are looking out for the interests of the United States of America and our great president, Donald J. Trump. Vote for Donald J. Trump and Congressman Grothman.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, okay.
Was that okay?
Oh, my goodness.